Hi, everyone. Vasu Vaddiparty here for the VPartySports Podcast for this Friday afternoon. We're going to be taping a few shows through the weekend as I've got protocols and previous engagements with some basketball over the weekend. So we'll do the Friday show right now. You'll see this at 3 o'clock Eastern, 12 o'clock Pacific with replays to follow. And then don't forget on Saturday and Sunday, we'll have the tape broadcast for you Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific time. Preview the NFL conference weekend. The NBA, the NCAA, NHL, the Daily Post this afternoon at 6 o'clock on the East Coast, 3 o'clock on the West Coast. And then on the weekends, it'll be 11 a.m. for the Daily Post right before tip-offs. Kickoffs go on Sunday, but tip-offs for college basketball. Big college basketball weekend, a big NBA weekend, especially Saturday with a triple header on network TV. So, and triple header in college basketball as well for the Fox network. ESPN will have the Big 12 SEC Challenge all day long, and then the other networks will carry their games as well. But full conference loaded, other than the Big 12 and the SEC. We'll get to all that in a second. All right, the updated lines. Everybody's all fired up in Philadelphia, in the Bay Area, in Cincinnati, and in Kansas City because the conference championship games will take place. We'll have plenty of time to break it down. We'll get down to the minutia as we get through the weekend. But right now, the updated lines for the games. Saturday, 3 o'clock, Sunday, 3 o'clock Eastern on Fox, Philadelphia, 2.5-point favorite. 46.5 is the total. You see the ticker going across as well. And then Kansas City now a 1-point favorite. The line has gone up to 48. In fact, I'll update that right now. That is 48 is the total now. Some places still have 47, but I believe it's 48 now is the line. Let's check that and get that right here before give you any misinformation. It's been a rough week here in terms of information. Let's see, 12, 14, 7, 12, 14, 18, and 5 in terms of weekly records. 2-6-2 yesterday. How did the Celtics lose to the Knicks? How did the Suns lose to the Mavericks? 2 pushes in the Big Ten with Michigan State and Purdue. Washington upset Arizona State. UCLA had a 12-point lead on USC, and they end up losing by 14. To lose that game, and now they're tied for first place in the Pac-12. We'll get to all that as well. Big weekend to get back on track. 53% for year-to-date. Still above 50%, not great. The average has come down a little bit since the start of this week. 6 o'clock Eastern for the best bets tonight. If you're interested in sponsorships, contact me directly through Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube at VPartySports or Vasu Vaddiparty on Facebook. All right, once again, let's get back to the NFL. Kansas City won 48. The 2 winners will meet in Super Bowl 57 on February 12th in Glendale, Arizona, the home of the Arizona Cardinals. Nowhere to be seen, but the game on Sunday will be on Fox for Philadelphia, San Francisco at 3 o'clock, 6:30 on CBS for Kansas City and Cincinnati. Now, the extensive research that I go through here, I will tell you this. It's about a 5-hour flight to Philadelphia. Not that that's shocking. So I got a feeling the 49ers going eastward will be taking off today. They'll get there in sometime late afternoon, early evening. They'll get their walkthroughs in. They'll go have a meal. Tomorrow will be a little bit of practice and walkthrough. They'll meet with the production people, the network people, the top players. We'll meet with the Fox people tomorrow evening. They're already there. They're meeting with Philadelphia right now. They're probably at practice right now, and they're taking in all the notes that they can to get ready for their broadcast on Sunday. Same with Cincinnati. They're going westward from an Eastern time zone to a Central time zone. It's about a 3-hour flight from Cincinnati, Ohio to Kansas City, Missouri. And they'll gain an hour. So they're going to go tomorrow, and they'll do the same prep work and same preparation going into the night. The most important thing is everybody gets rest on Saturday night going into Sunday. They'll have to wait all day in the AFC until 6:30 for the game to start, and then 3 o'clock as well to wait. That's noon out here on the West Coast. We're not used to it at noontime starts for the NFL. They start at 10 o'clock out here. Again, the winners will go to Glendale. All the minutia, all the breakdowns. How important is McCaffrey? The Kansas City defense against the Cincinnati trio of receivers. Hunter Henry at tight end. Joe Mixon at running back. Defense, who's going to stop who on third downs in Philadelphia, San Francisco. San Francisco's one bad game against a mobile quarterback was the opening weekend against the Bears. Totally different team now. Of course, they've got McCaffrey since then. They were 3-4. We'll see if they can stop the Jalen Hurts run. Greenlaw and Warner, the 2 best linebackers combination in the NFL. They did well with Geno Smith, and they did well with running quarterbacks later in the year. You have to do well on defense if you've won 13 in a row, 11 straight to close the year out, or 10 straight to close the year out, and 2 in the playoffs. So 12 in a row is where they ended up at in terms of the win streak. And then Philadelphia, they had Hurts hurt for a while. Say that fast a couple of times. Hurts was hurt for a while. Gardner Minshew came in, didn't play all that bad, didn't play great. They ended up at 14-3. They're the 1 seed. Kansas City, of course, you know how they got the 1 seed, even though they lost to Cincinnati during the year. The Bengals and Bills game postponed on the Monday night due to the Damar Hamlin situation. And by the way, from what I understand, conspiracy theories abound, but he is still alive and he is recovering. He still is going to take some time to get back, so good for him. But Buffalo losing to Cincinnati at home yesterday. Cincinnati has a good pass rush. They're down 3 offensive linemen, at least they were last weekend. Capps and Wilson, the 2 big ones, left tackle and right guard. See how that goes for Cincinnati coming into this weekend against the Kansas City pass rush that's been pretty good this year, but their linebackers and secondary have given up a lot of yards. And so see how that goes for Cincinnati, because they can throw the ball in Kansas City. Kansas City has given up points and given up yards, but they've got the number 1 offense in the NFL. So all that and more, we'll break that down Saturday and Sunday. Fully anticipatory NFL preview show Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern, with replays to follow before the 3 o'clock start for the NFC game and the 6:30 start for the AFC game. Of course, the winners in Glendale on February 12th. Media Week's going to be a lot of fun in a warm city for a lot of media people coming from cold cities the week of February 6th in Glendale, Arizona. All right, last night in the NBA, we had some recaps. I had the Celtics. I had the Suns. I had the over in the Bulls and the Hornets. I believe the Clippers. No, the Clippers I had. So 1 and 2 last night. But how did the Celtics blow a 15-point lead? They lost to Miami. They had a big lead on Miami Tuesday night. That was on the road. This is at home. Celtics built up a 15-point lead. They shoot 2 of their next 17. Game was tight all the way through. Knicks had a big lead going in. Celtics came back, tied it up in OT, but they ended up losing 120-117 in overtime to the New York Knicks. That's a big win for the Knicks on the road, because here they are now. They're trying to fight to stay out of the play-in tournament. They're in 7th right now. They're a half game back of Miami. Miami has Orlando tonight. We'll get to the previews in a second. You can see the lines going across to the bottom. So if you catch the NBA lines, you'll get them there. Only 5 games in the NBA. But in that game between the Knicks and Celtics last night, Celtics were an 8.5-point favorite. The total was 221. So the overtime helped. It went over 237. So, yeah, it ended up at 220, 110 apiece. So the overtime did help on the over, but the box score reads like this. Julius Randle, he should be getting some MVP votes. I know they're 7th in the NBA East right now, but he should be getting some MVP votes. 37 points, 9 rebounds, 29 for Jalen Brunson, a great free agent pickup for him. 17 for Emmanuel Quickly off the bench, including 2 of 3 from 3. But the offensive rebounds killed the Boston Celtics. The New York Knicks had 15 offensive rebounds of the 55 possible rebounds. That's 3 by 11. That's 27% offensive rebound percentage. That's too high when you're the number 1 team in the East at 35-15 now after the loss. Jason Tatum had 35 points for Boston, but they did not shoot well. They only shot 41%. They took 100 shots last night, 16 of 46 on threes, 19 of 23 free throw shooting. They got their 15 offensive rebounds as well, too. 39. Actually, the Knicks had 10 offensive rebounds of the 49, so they were about 20%. But there were some secondary chances. The Celtics went 2 of 17 after they built up that 15-point lead. They go on to lose. The Gamecast scoring, as I have it here, it was an 8-point lead after 1. It was a 4-point lead at half. They were down 4 at the half, down 6 at the half, tied it up at the end of the fourth quarter. And then the Knicks got the overtime win. Celtics started off big. They got a 4-point lead in the overtime, but then couldn't handle the onslaught. Julius Randle was big, 37 points, 9 rebounds for the New York Knicks superstar. We'll get to the All-Star game. The starters were announced. We'll talk about that tomorrow as well, too, ahead of a big NBA Saturday. All right, the Pistons go into Brooklyn, and they beat the Knicks 130-122. Brooklyn, a 7.5-point favorite at closing time, 234.5. Game goes way over. The Detroit Pistons are still without Cade Cunningham, but they got 25 from Sadiq Bey, who's turned himself into a really good player. the former Villanova Wildcat. Alec Burks has 20 points for them. 16 off the bench for Killian Hayes from Ireland. And 11 for Isaiah Stewart. He was questionable to play or not, but he came off the bench, ended up playing. They outscored the Brooklyn Nets in the first quarter by 3, down 1 at the half. But then the third quarter, they came out like gangbusters, outscored them by 12, held on for the 8-point win. So now Brooklyn, standings-wise, they're fourth now, 29-19. They're 2 back of Milwaukee in the 3 spot. Milwaukee has Indiana tonight. They're 3 back of the Philadelphia 76ers, who won the other night. They're the hottest team in the NBA right now, won 6 in a row, going into tonight, this weekend, with a big matchup against the Denver Nuggets. So Brooklyn, 130-122 loss to the Detroit Pistons. The Bulls, they lose to the Hornets. The game, I had this game as the over, 36-32 after 1 quarter. You're thinking 68 points, 236. That's going to be an easy get. Nothing in the second quarter, 19-15. It was 55-47 at the half, Chicago. And then the Hornets went on fire, 64-41. They outscore the Bulls in the second half. Unbelievable. Rozier, Scary Terry, comes up with 28 points. Miles Plumlee, 21 points on 9 of 9 shooting. His free throw percentage is not very good. That's where he does not make his money, but he was 3 of 4 last night. LaMelo Ball had 15 points. He was only 2 of 15 shooting, but he was 9 of 10 from the free throw line. Anyway, the Hornets come back. They beat the Bulls, 111-96. They're not anywhere near the playoff spot. Chicago just out of the playoff spot right now. They're 11th. They're tied with Washington. Washington has the tiebreaker on them as Washington has the number 10 spot. Charlotte at 14-36 after their win. They're only 6-16 at home. So go figure that the Bulls is a 3.5-point favorite. And that line went down. People know something about the Bulls right now because they have not played well. They've had their stretch a few weeks back. I don't know if the DeRozan-Levine thing is going off with them, but they've had their stretch right now. So Chicago with the 111-96 loss at Charlotte last night. The Cavaliers beat the Rockets 113-95. Can't figure the Cavaliers out on the road, but they didn't even have Mitchell last night. 21 for Mobley, 26 for Darius Garland. Darius Garland, very underrated for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Jabari Smith, Kenyon Martin Jr., and Sengun all had 14 apiece, 18 off the bench for Eason. And then Ty Washington had 10 for the Rockets, but they get beat 113-95. It was close for a while. Actually, the 12-point lead after 1:14, it was 26 at half. And then the Rockets started to make a move a little bit, but they end up losing by 18. So it really wasn't close at all. And then the Mavericks and the Suns. How about this? I had the Suns as well, too. So it was not a good day in the NBA. It was 1-2. Clippers we'll get to in a second because when they have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on the floor together, they're pretty much unstoppable. Phoenix, a 1-point favorite or a 1.5-point favorite, depending on when you got it. They lose 99-95. Here's the thing about what happened last night. Luka Doncic hurt himself 3 minutes into the game. 3 minutes into the game, he was 0 for 2, didn't even score any points, and had to be taken out. But Spencer Dinwiddie picked up the slack. 36 points, even made a bank shot, didn't call glass, shot clock running down, even made a bank shot from 35 feet that went in. That ball doesn't go in. Phoenix has a chance to get back into it in the fourth quarter. But 5 guys in double figures, 4 starters, Doncic out after 3 minutes. And yet the Dallas Mavericks, 99-95, they are one of the worst teams at covering against the spread. It is the Dallas Mavericks, and that proves it by the way they played. They're 17-9 at home. They're now 9-15 on the road. They're in the 6th spot, 26-24, one game better than Phoenix. So that game last night proved to be differential as they also beat Phoenix on opening night this year as well, too. And what's going on with Phoenix? They got Chris Paul back. They played well. They played well with Chris Paul back. He had 22 points. Cameron Johnson had 22 points. He was 5 of 7 on threes. Ayton only had 16. Ayton had 19 on 6 of 20. And Mikal Bridges, 16 points, 5 of 12 shooting. So Ayton and Bridges, 11 for 32 shooting last night, and 2 of 6 on 3. Ayton did have 20 rebounds for the Phoenix Suns. So in that situation, he got them. But they end up losing by 4. They were down early. They were even after 1, down 6 at the half, down 7 after 3, and then end up losing by 4. 99-95, the game stays under 221. So as we go through it, NBA-wise, 1 dog, 2 dogs, 3 dogs, 4 dogs, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 4 dogs, 2 favorites win. Over-unders, 1, 2, 2 and 1. I believe the Rockets game went under. That's 2 and 2. The Suns game went under 2 and 3, and the Clippers 138 to 100. That goes over, so that by barely over. 234 was the total there. We'll get to that in a second. But 3 overs and 3 unders in the NBA. Don't forget best bets coming up at 6 o'clock Eastern. The Daily Post on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. All right, so you look at the NBA right now. You see the lines going at the bottom. Let's get the NBA lines out of the way here before we get to college basketball. A big day in college basketball. Milwaukee at Indiana, 229, 239.5 the total. Milwaukee favored by 8.5. Milwaukee on a little bit of a roll right now. They've won 2 straight. They're only 12 and 12 away, and sometimes they play down to their competition. Indiana still without Tyrese Halliburton, but 8.5 at Indiana, 239.5. The Memphis Grizzlies, tough loss to the Warriors the other night. They got beat up by Sacramento. No John Morant on Monday night, but he played on Wednesday against the Warriors. They're 31 and 17. They're 2 back of the Nuggets. They're a 3-point favorite at Minnesota, who's playing 500 ball right now. And Minnesota's 8 and 2 against the spread. So they're a home underdog, 6 and 4 overall in their last 10. They've given up 115.4 points a game. They've scored 115.2. So they're right about even. Memphis is plus 4.5, but they're only 3 and 7 in their last 10 against the spread. They covered against the Warriors. They did not cover against Cleveland a few weeks back, and it's been kind of hit and miss from their real close games going into these last 2 weeks for the Memphis Grizzlies. So Memphis, a 3-point favorite at Minnesota, 238.5. Miami, after their win over Boston, they're in the 6th spot. They've won 2 in a row. They're win 7 out of their last 10. They've got Orlando, who's won 2 straight. They're an 8-point favorite, 219 the total. Defense, 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 all about the Miami Heat right now. Jimmy Butler didn't play in the last game. See what the status is for him today. See who the injuries are today. Kevon Harris, Jonathan Isaac, Max Strus is day-to-day for Miami. So nothing listed about Jimmy Butler. Maybe it was more of a rest the other night against Boston, but they came back and beat Boston the other night. 219 the total. Oklahoma City, they started out as a 1-point underdog. Now they're at 1 and 222.5 versus Cleveland. Cleveland got the win at Houston last night. Remember I told you Oklahoma City, one of the best teams as an underdog in the NBA, although they didn't prove it against Atlanta the other night. They were right there with Atlanta, had leads as big as 7 and 8 points, but they ended up losing by 5 to the Atlanta Hawks. They get Cleveland in tonight. Line has gone up to 1.5 in some cases. A lot of people think Cleveland will win. Kevin Love and Donovan Mitchell day to day. Make sure you check the Daily Post to get the latest updates on injuries as well, and do your own research as well. And Lou Dortz is out tonight for Oklahoma City as well. So -1, 222.5 at the time of this taping. And then finally, the last game of the night, the Golden State Warriors coming off their win over Memphis on Friday night. They're a 5-point favorite against Toronto. Toronto got the big win at Sacramento. Sacramento, 3.5-point favorite the other night against Toronto. But Toronto showed up big time on Wednesday. They had, I'm going to go through the box score here real quick because I found it pretty impressive. Siakam had 26. Van Vliet had 17, Gary Trent had 16, Boucher off the bench 16, and Precious Achiuwa, who's turned himself into a pretty good player, off the bench 19 points for him as well in their 113-95 win over the Kings. The Warriors, they held off Memphis 122-120. Jordan Poole got the game-winning basket at the end. Brandon Clark, 5 starters in double figures. Aldama off the bench also in double figures. 19 for Clark, 17 for Jackson, 10 for Brooks, 20 for Bain, and the leader, John Morant, 29 points on 10 of 20 shooting. He also dished out 12 assists in that game. Meanwhile, for the Warriors, Kuminga had 13, Curry had 34. He got ejected with 1:14 left to go in the game for throwing his mouthpiece into the crowd. Hey, if we can't throw stuff from the crowd onto the court or onto the field, then you can't throw stuff into the stands. Rightfully so, he got ejected. I know people will say otherwise, but that was a warranted ejection. Klay Thompson, 24, and Jordan Poole, the game winner, had 21 as well. Bench play still a question here for the Warriors. They got a combined 22 points off the bench between JaMychal Green, Kevon Looney, Anthony Lamb, and Dante DiVincenzo. The bench shot 3 of 7, 5 of 13, 7 of 20 from the bench, and only 2 of 7 from 3. So they're going to have to get some bench play. Toronto can throw 10 guys out at you and they've got the guys that can do it. So 5-point favorite for Golden State and 235 the total. All right, we come back. You see the ticker going across. Break time, a huge college basketball Saturday to go into. We'll delve into detail more as the weekend goes through, as we get to Saturday broadcast, but I'll give you a preview of the big college basketball games, including an out-of-conference challenge between two of the major conferences in college basketball. Again, you can reach me on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at VPartySports on Twitter and Instagram. Facebook, Vasu Vaddiparty. YouTube, please subscribe. Thank you all for the comments. We're back in 30 seconds with a big look at college basketball, maybe a couple more notes of the NFL before we get out of here, and we'll talk some NHL as well, too. All right, Vasu Vaddiparty here for the VParty Sports Podcast. We'll be back in 30 seconds. Welcome back to the VParty Sports Podcast. Vasu Vaddiparty here with you on this Friday afternoon, a little bit after 3 o'clock, probably about 3:20 now, if you're getting the first tape version. And then we'll have replays to follow so you don't miss any of the information. Big weekend in the NFL. Obviously, everybody fired up for Conference Championship Sunday. The Eagles and 49ers lead it off from Philadelphia, 3 o'clock on Fox, and then the Bengals and Chiefs on CBS at 6:30 in Kansas City, Missouri. CBS will have that game as well, too. The winners will go to the Super Bowl 2 weeks from Sunday on February 12th in Glendale, Arizona. All right, the ticker going across. You see the lines currently for the NFL and the NBA. Not a lot of college to talk about today. The MAC has one game, Kent State 10.5 versus Buffalo, 150.5 the total there. Saturday, Bowling Green at Toledo, Ohio at Akron, Eastern Michigan at Miami of Ohio, and Ball State will be at Northern Illinois, and Western Michigan against Central Michigan. A lot of directional schools going on. In the conference, as we said yesterday, it is Kent State and Akron leading the way at 6-1, Toledo 5-2. So these games this weekend, heading into the second half of the conference play, very big in the MAC. Last night in the Pac-12, UCLA, I mentioned, had a 12-point lead. They end up losing to USC. In a big matchup there, USC wins 77-64. UCLA had a 12-point lead at half. Get outscored. Mick Cronin's defense, what he prides himself on, outscored by 25 points in the second half of that game, 52-27. UCLA now 77-64 loss to USC, crosstown rivals. And now Utah moves into second place. They're 8-3 with their win. UCLA 8-2. One game better than Utah, Arizona, and USC. Get to the rest of the Pac-10 in a second. Oregon beat the Colorado Buffaloes 75-69. They're now 6-4 in conference. They did not cover the 6.5 at home. Colorado did cover, and Colorado now 4-7 on the conference year. 75-69 for Colorado. University of Washington upset Arizona State. Arizona State came in as a 2.5-point favorite. That game in overtime, 69-66. It ended up at 2.5, 3 in some places, 144.5 the total. Game still stayed under. Arizona State had a 12-point deficit at the half. They tied it up toward the end, and then Washington got big baskets at the end. Keon Brooks drilled a three-pointer in overtime. That was one of the big plays for Washington. And you look at the standings there. Arizona State got off to a hot start. Now they are 6-4 in conference. Washington 5-6. They host Arizona on Saturday. That's the middle game of a triple header on Fox, 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific. All right, you look at Arizona. Now, I don't know what you had for the lines Arizona-wise. It was 4.5, 5, 5.5. I think I saw it ended at 5. University of Washington State got a three-pointer at the buzzer that covered the 5.5 that pushed on 5. I had it at 5. It was a push, but it should have never come down to that. Arizona missed a dunk at the end. Washington State ran it back, hit a 3. You could tell it was going to go in, especially if you had Arizona. You knew it was going to go in. So that was a loss for some and a push for a lot of others. But they get the win 63-58. They're 7-3 in conference now. Washington State now 4-7 with that loss. They'll play Arizona State Saturday. Arizona goes to Washington, as we said on Saturday. Oregon State loses to Utah. Oregon State's very bad this year. 2-8 in conference. University of Utah now 8-3. They're a half game back of UCLA. 3 losses, 1 game back of UCLA in conference. A 19-point win for a very talented Utah team. Very good defensively. They held Oregon State to 16 first quarter points. It was a little bit closer in the second half, but they outscored them 31-29. Game stayed way under at 130.5 and 7.5 easily covered on the road for Utah. Brandon Carlson had 12 points, as did Raleigh Worcester. Madsen had 13 for the winning Utes, 11 for Pope on Oregon State. He was the only guy in double figures, and that happens when you only shoot 44 points in the game. Utah held Oregon State to 34% shooting on 17 of 50 and 2 of 18 on threes. Look out for Utah in the Pac-12. Can't wait for them and UCLA to match up. Find out when they play. In fact, I'll tell you right now when they're going to play. Utah and UCLA, they're not going to play in January. They're going to play UCLA at home on February 23rd. I'm trying to see if they played already. They did. UCLA beat them by 19 in Los Angeles on January 12th. And so the rematch will take place on February 23rd with Utah and UCLA. Saturday's Pac-12 action. We have no lines yet for you. In fact, when I go through all these conferences, we have no lines yet. We'll have those on Saturday morning show as best as we can. Arizona will go to Washington, as mentioned earlier. Arizona State at Washington State. Utah at Oregon. Cal Stanford will play the big game rivalry, and then Colorado will visit Oregon State. Again, no lines yet out on the games as of yet, but the Arizona-Washington game will be very interesting. The Cal-Stanford game, just for Bay Area purposes, will be interesting. And Oregon's a very good team, and they're going to host Utah. They beat Utah in Salt Lake City the last time they played, so that's one of the 3 losses in conference for Utah. So that'll be an interesting matchup. That's at 5 o'clock West Coast time for Utah and Oregon on Saturday. All right, and the WCC, Loyola Marymount coming off their upset over Gonzaga last week. They beat Portland University 79-70. 79-70, the final score there over Portland. They are now at 15-7. Portland at 11-12. San Diego upsets Pepperdine. Pepperdine was a 3.5-point favorite. The total 164. The game goes over by 1 point. But USD and my guy Steve Lavin got 30 points from Marcellus Earlington, and San Diego over Pepperdine 87-78 Thursday night in the upset, a 3.5-point underdog. Now, Saturday, UOP will be at Santa Clara. Gonzaga will be at Portland. St. Mary's, who is undefeated in conference, will be at BYU. Tough place to play in Provo, Utah. USF will be at USD to take on the Toreros. And the Pepperdine Waves will take on Loyola Marymount in Los Angeles, in downtown Los Angeles, kind of a rivalry there. So you look at the standings, Pepperdine 0-8 in conference right now. They are trailing USF at 3-5, USD at 3-5, Portland 3-5, and UOP 3-4. But on top, St. Mary's 7-0, Gonzaga 6-1. Their loss to Loyola Marymount, who's 5-3. Santa Clara is 4-3, and BYU 4-4. So that's where you have it in the WAC right there. So now let's move on to the different colleges for the weekend. We've got Boston College at Virginia in the ACC, Louisville at Notre Dame, North Carolina State at Wake Forest, Georgia Tech at North Carolina State at Wake Forest, Duke at Georgia Tech, Miami at Pittsburgh, Clemson, who leads the conference at 9-1, at Florida State, and Syracuse at Virginia Tech. Look at the standings here real quick in the ACC. Clemson 9-1 and Virginia 7-2. Pitt and Miami and North Carolina all 7-3. So the top 3, 4, 5 teams all battling out for top honors in the ACC. Moving on to the American Conference. Houston got a win the other night. They'll host Cincinnati tomorrow. Temple in second place in that conference. They're at UCF. So not a lot to say right now. The conference is featuring the Houston Cougars, number 3 in the nation, and the Temple Owls are going to go play at UCF. That'll be an interesting line to see if UCF will be favored against Temple, because Houston was a 17-point favorite against Temple, and we know they upset them last Sunday, but Houston got the win on Wednesday night at UCF. All right, Big Ten. Michigan State beat Iowa. That was another push, and Purdue a push as well at Michigan, 63-61. and Purdue 75-70. A lot of pushes in college last night. At least I had two of them anyway. Saturday, we'll have Minnesota at Northwestern, Illinois at Wisconsin, Nebraska at Maryland, and Ohio State at Indiana. That's prime time on Fox, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. That's the third game of the triple header that we had said. The Illinois-Wisconsin game will be the first game at 3 o'clock, and then Ohio State-Indiana wraps the night up with Arizona-Washington in the middle. So the Big Ten standings now after Thursday, Purdue 9-1 now. They're ahead of Rutgers at 6-3. Northwestern 5-3. They're playing really well. Chris Collins has them going really well. Michigan State with a win over Iowa, 6-4. Iowa now 4-5 in conference. Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, all 5-4. Michigan with a loss yesterday to Purdue in that game on Thursday night. And then, as we said, Saturday, Minnesota, Northwestern, Illinois, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Maryland, Ohio State, Indiana. There are 3 games on Sunday. We'll get to those. Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State, Purdue, Rutgers, and Iowa. All those games in the morning West Coast time before football starts. We'll preview those on the Sunday morning show before we get to NFL football. All right, in the Big 12, they're going to have the SEC Challenge. So these 5 games are all at Big 12 sites this weekend. Very interesting conference the Big 12 is right now. Saturday, it'll be Auburn at West Virginia. That'll be at 9 a.m. West Coast time. Alabama, Oklahoma at 11. Arkansas and Baylor at the Big 12 site. That'll be at 1 o'clock. And then Florida at Kansas State at 3 o'clock. Mississippi at Oklahoma State. That'll be at 5 o'clock. So they're staggering the Big 12 SEC Challenge. Let's go to the SEC side of it. The SEC side of it will have Iowa State visiting Missouri. Texas Tech will be at LSU. TCU at Mississippi State. Texas will go to Tennessee. And Kansas and Kentucky. That's a huge one on ESPN. Kansas on 3 straight losses right now, and Kentucky coming off their last game of victory over Vanderbilt. 2 wins in a row, 3 wins in a row, 4 wins in a row, going back to the Tennessee game after losing to South Carolina at home in a big upset back on January 10th. Kentucky on a 4-game winning streak. So the standings in the Big 12 right now are Iowa State, Kansas State, Texas, all 6-2. TCU, Baylor, and Kansas at 5-3 coming into this weekend's play. In the SEC, standings-wise, it is the Alabama Crimson Tide, 8-0, Tennessee 7-1, Texas A&M 6-1, Auburn 6-2, Kentucky 5-3, Florida 5-3, and then Missouri at 4-4 in conference play. I failed to mention the Alabama game, Alabama at Oklahoma. Alabama, number 2 in the country right now behind Purdue. But there's a lot of people that think that Alabama could be better than Purdue. Certainly offensively, they are better. But defensively right now, Purdue is locking it down. Alabama had a tough game against Mississippi State early in the week. They could have lost. They're 18-2 overall, 8-0 in conference. They have a 1-game lead over Tennessee. In fact, when do they play? That's going to be very interesting to see when they play, if they play again. They've got that game on February 15th, Wednesday night. Alabama will visit Tennessee. Did they play already? I don't think they played already. They did not play already. They did not play already. So that's going to be a one-time deal for Alabama and Tennessee, and that's going to be a good TV watching there as well. All right, the Big East, Xavier at Creighton, Marquette at DePaul, Seton Hall at Butler. Butler got blown out the other night. The standings there in the Big East are like this. Xavier with their win at Marquette, 9-1. 1 game better than Marquette, 1 game better than Providence at 8-2, and then Creighton 6-3, 5-5 for Seton Hall, and then Connecticut after their loss to Xavier, 5-6. Now after starting out 14-0, they've lost 5. They've 14-0. They've only won 2 of their last 6 after Wednesday night's loss. So Creighton hosting Xavier. That game will be early on CBS. Marquette at DePaul, and then Seton Hall at Butler. Missouri Valley Conference, 3 games to talk about. We told you about Belmont and Southern Illinois. They're not playing tomorrow. Missouri Valley Conference will have a very good Missouri State team against Murray State, Northern Iowa, and Indiana State, Evansville, and Valparaiso. Sunday, we'll have Southern Illinois and Illinois State, Drake and Belmont, and Bradley and UIC. talk more about Sunday on tomorrow's program, Sunday morning's program as well, when we break down the basketball. But standings-wise, in the Missouri Valley Conference, it is Southern Illinois and Belmont, both at 9-2, Northern Iowa at 8-3, Drake, Bradley, Missouri State, all 7-4 for top honors in the Missouri Valley Conference. Mountain West, 3 games to go at. One game tonight is New Mexico, 12.5. They are favored over Air Force, 142.5 the total. New Mexico comes in at number 25. That game on CBS Sports Network, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. Standings-wise, Saturday, Utah State at Fresno State, Colorado State at Boise State, San Jose State at top dog San Diego State, and a good Nevada State rivalry matchup with Nevada-Reno going up against UNLV. UNLV off to a hot start, but in conference play, they've fallen to 2-6. Reno at 6-2, along with Boise State. They are 1 game back of San Diego State at 7-1. Then you have New Mexico and Utah State at 5-3, San Jose State at 4-4, Air Force and Fresno State 3-5, Colorado State at 2-6. So Utah State at Fresno State, Colorado State at Boise State, San Jose State at San Diego State, and Nevada-Reno at UNLV. All right, the WCC we went through. We hit all the college basketball. We'll have all the lines for you Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern. You'll have them on the ticker, the Daily Post, at 11 o'clock as well. One last break for 30 seconds. We'll get to the hockey. We'll talk a little NFL. Actually, you know what? We're not going to take a break. We're running out of time. We're going to hit the NHL right now. Thursday in the NHL, we had some upsets. Bruins lost to the Lightning 3-2. The Penguins lose to the Capitals in the shootout 3-2. And the Winnipeg Jets lose to Buffalo at home 3-2. The Buffalo Sabres, that's an 0-3 hockey night for the picks that I had. The hockey status, Tampa Bay beat the very hot Bruins. Capitals lose in the shootout. The hot Wild beat the Flyers. Nashville beat New Jersey 6-4. And the Jets get derailed by Buffalo. 3 games I said yesterday. Now, I've been doing pretty well in hockey. I'm 0-3 yesterday, but 4-4 overall in hockey. By the way, 6, 7, 3, 4, 5, 7, 5-2 in college basketball, and 3 and 9 and 1 in the NBA. Not very good this week so far. It's been an off week for me this week, but 2-6-2 yesterday. But remember I said heavy favorites in the NFL, heavy favorites in the NBA. Happened yesterday in the NBA with Boston as well too. The Clippers, they did cover their 13.5. They beat up on San Antonio. Remember I said it's very worrisome for me to take a $4 favorite. Well, Calgary and Colorado were both $4 favorites. Calgary was hosting the Chicago Blackhawks. They were a $4 favorite, -400, -410, depending on when you got it. 6 was the total number. They pushed. That's not the story. The Blackhawks beat them 5-1. So can you imagine about 3-1 underdog odds on the Chicago Blackhawks? Now, if that wasn't bad enough, the Anaheim Mighty Ducks beat the Colorado Avalanche 5-3. Anaheim only 15-29-5. Colorado 26-18-3. Colorado was a 410 favorite. 420 it went up to with a 6.5 total. 5-3 Anaheim wins. So if you parlayed that, just those 2 teams, and even if you take Arizona, they were a 130 underdog to St. Louis at home. Buffalo, a 160 underdog to the Jets. Nashville was an underdog to New Jersey, a home dog. Nonetheless, the Canadians, everybody else was favored that won. Red Wings beat the Canadians. The Sabres beat the Jets. So we've got these 2 underdogs in Chicago and Anaheim coming through at +300 odds. That would have been a big payday, even for a $10 bet. +300 odds, it would have been better. In fact, I'll tomorrow's show, I'm going to remind myself to do the parlay calculator and figure out what that would have been, or I'll put it on the Daily Post later this afternoon. So Friday, we've got a shortened schedule Friday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. You see the lines there. The Islanders play Detroit, 185.5. Toronto, 200 versus Ottawa. Toronto Maple Leafs very hot right now. Florida, 145 against a pretty good LA Kings team. And that's 145, 6.5 the total. Carolina hosts the Sharks, nearly a 3-1 favorite. Watch out for those 3-1 favorites. 6 the total there. Rangers have Vegas. Vegas has been struggling. They've been injured all over the board for Las Vegas. 155, no pun intended, on all over the board. But they are up and down that lineup. They are injured. 155 is the Rangers. 6 the total. Dallas, 160 over New Jersey. New Jersey coming off that loss yesterday at Nashville on the road, Be interesting to see. 6 the total there. Vancouver has not been playing well, but neither has Columbus. They're a 190 favorite, 180 favorite, 6.5 the total. The semi-hot, red-hot Kraken at 28-14 will play the Calgary Flames, 6 the total. Seattle minus 120 in that game. The home goals are favored by 380. A lot of people expect the home teams to win. I'm trying to look and see if I can find any road teams that might have a shot tonight. The New Jersey Devils, the Calgary Flames, Columbus Blue Jackets, maybe the LA Kings as well. I already said that. So Kings, Devils, Flames, and Blue Jackets, probably the 4 teams on the road. So 380 might be high there. And the Grand Salami at 50.5, the total number of goals. You either pick over or under. And then Saturday, they've got a full slate. Sunday, a limited slate of 2 games as well. Talk more about that on Saturday and Sunday. So don't forget, lots of things happening this weekend. Obviously, the football, the number one thing. College basketball with their Big 12 SEC Challenge, conference play all over. The NBA has a full schedule on Saturday, starting at 3 o'clock East Coast time. Nuggets and Sixers, the last 2 runner-ups on the MVPs, Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. The All-Star starters were announced yesterday. We'll get to that. They're going to make the teams up about a couple hours before the All-Star game. We'll give you the details on that. So it'll be Nuggets-Knicks at 3 o'clock, Knicks and Nets at 5:30, Lakers-Celtics at 8:30. That's the triple header on ABC. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games total on Saturday. Sunday, 1, 2, 3, 4 games on Sunday. I feel sorry for the games that are going to start after 12 o'clock West Coast time because that's going to be right in the middle of football. You might not have a chance to get to see any NBA on Sunday as well. All right. That's going to do it. Don't forget, best bets coming up, 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific this evening with the best games of the day. I know my record hasn't been great, 2-6-2 yesterday, but I plan on changing that up tonight. Don't forget, you can catch us tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern, Saturday and Sunday. The Daily Post will be at 11 a.m. NBA, NCAA, NHL, and everybody is fired up for Sunday with the AFC and NFC Conference Championship games. The NFC will go first at 3 o'clock with the Philadelphia Eagles hosting San Francisco. The current line is still 2.5 and 46.5, 3 o'clock Eastern on Fox. Kansas City, that line keeps moving back and forth from Cincinnati being favored to Kansas City being favored. -1 for Kansas City, 48 the total, 6:30 Eastern on CBS. The winners will go to the Super Bowl. All right, I'm Vasu Vaddiparty at VPartySports on Twitter and Instagram. Reach me on Facebook and YouTube as well, too. Don't forget to reach out for sponsorships. See you for the Daily Post at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. And then Saturday and Sunday, taped shows, 9 a.m. Eastern with replays to follow. The Daily Post will be 11 a.m. Eastern on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Speaking of which, thanks to everybody on all those platforms for your support. Look forward to getting a hold of you this weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great Friday. Good luck with your games. And don't forget, replays are coming back with you starting at 3:30 this afternoon. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.